Soccerex Connected, good afternoon. Day 4, Ben Jacobs with you, presented by Teamworks. Keep engaging with us. Use that hashtag Soccerex Connected. Good morning to those of you waking up in North, South and Central America. We've got a great lineup. Our theme for the day is broadcasting, commercial and marketing. The full schedule is available on the app and also via our website as well. And I've got a signed shirt to give away too. In fact, a vast array that you can pick from. Jean-Pierre Papin, Laurie Lindsay, Carlos Alberto, Deco, many, many more. Head over to @Soccerex for the photograph of all the shirts that are available. And because today our presenting partner is Teamworks, we are asking you which two players just work together. They might be current players at your favorite team. You can mix and match between past and present, or you can fictionalize it and put Messi and Ronaldo in the same team, although I'm not sure that particular pairing would work. But a few of you have certainly suggested it. Thanks to Utkarash, who's been in touch and said Marcelo and Cristiano Ronaldo are the best partnership on and off the pitch. Hard to disagree with that when Marcelo bombs forwards. Chris Andrews says Son and Kane, definitely the partnership of the season in the EPL so far. Don Dada says Xavi and Iniesta. Barcelona definitely missing both of those players at the moment. And Jill Espiritu says Abby Wambach and Mia Hamm, two absolute legends of the women's game. So which two players just work together? Tweet me @Soccerex. Use the hashtag SoccerXConnected for your chance to win a signed shirt. And lots of you suggesting La Liga pairings. And I'm delighted to say on the next panel, we have Boris Gartner, the CEO of La Liga North America, a friend of mine over in New York at Relevant Sports as well. Maybe he'll chuck in a La Liga shirt that we can give away later in the week. And let's move on to that next panel now. It's sponsored by WSC and it's called The Best and the Rest. And in a more rational financial reality, we asked the question, what will happen to sports broadcast rights and have they peaked? Which rights provide value for broadcasters right now and which are overpriced? How will the pandemic change things and where is the market heading? We are delighted to be joined by Amir, the Managing Director of International Media at the NFL. Alongside him, we have Rob Brown, the Group Head of Media at Livescore. From Telemundo Deportes, we have their President, Ray Warren, and the Head of North America Enterprise Business Development at WSC, sponsor of this panel, joins us as well, Amir Gelman, and as I say, Boris Gartner, the CEO of La Liga North America too. And the legendary moderator, Pedro Pinto, will marshal the troops for this one. He's the founder and CEO of Empire Sports, and you'll also see him absolutely everywhere, including on FIFA platforms too. Pedro, glad you can join us. Over to you.
Thanks, Ben. I didn't know I had reached legendary status. I don't know if that's good because of profile or bad because I'm reaching a certain age that you normally get to reach when you're called a legend. Anyway, enough about that. Gentlemen, great to have you on board for this live panel at Soccerex Connected. We're live from Lisbon, where I am, London, and various points of the United States. I'm going to get stuck in right away, gentlemen, because there's no way around it. COVID has changed our ways of life, has changed the ways we consume sports broadcasting, whether that's live, whether that's highlights. The question has to be, to kick us off, how has COVID affected your content, your business, and your numbers? And perhaps here we can start with either Boris or Amir, speaking as rights owners from a league perspective.
Sure, I'm happy to kick things off, Pedro, and many thanks for having me on this panel. Actually, despite the disruption that COVID has caused throughout the world, global economies, and particularly the sports sector, we actually haven't seen, from an international perspective, that much disruption. Our viewing figures from a ratings perspective on broadcast are up materially and significantly in most of our key markets. We've seen significant growth in terms of engagement and followership on social media, and also in terms of our own direct consumer product, significant growth there. So despite what your hypothesis in terms of asking that question, actually, from our perspective, the NFL, we feel that we've had, from an international standpoint, a really good season this year.
What about LaLiga, Boris? Have you noticed anything in the way that people are consuming the matches and the content?
Yeah, and thanks to you, Pedro, for having me as well. And Ben can count on the LaLiga jersey or jerseys for the giveaways. We'll talk about that. But I have to agree with Samir. We haven't seen a particularly negative impact, specifically and internationally. What I can speak about the U.S. market with COVID. Actually, the strategy that we're running here in the U.S. is very digital content centric, and we've been doing it for the past 2.5 years. So we were, in a sense, ready for a situation like this one. We have a studio actually based in Mexico that's producing 16 weekly digital shows in English and in Spanish. So when everything was halted, of course, it's an impact to the competition, but we were ready and with the capabilities to just keep on churning content and engaging with the audience, probably telling slightly different stories beyond just the competition. But it has been very productive, and it has allowed us also to connect with the audience in a very different way. So we've seen actually not only a sustainability on that point, but also actually a little bit of an uptick.
What about from a broadcast channel perspective, Ray?
Sorry, make sure you said Ray.
Yes, I did.
Gotcha,
Ray.
gotcha. Yeah. So we're, obviously when the games were not being played, that was a difficult period for us. We had to get creative with themed weekends of re-airs and other types of content that actually started out really well, and then over time, I think it kind of ran out of gas and people just wanted live matches. So we, during the pandemic, have added 2 new deals on our air. We started doing Sunday Night Football on Universo, and we bought the rights to the Chivas de Guadalajara from Liga MX, and those games are airing on Telemundo. So we found some opportunity during that period. Our Sunday Night Football numbers were double what they were the last time we did NFL. And the Chivas game started off a little slow at the beginning of Apertura, usually does. And then, they made it into Liguilla, and we had a Super Clásico, and it was amazing. And now they're off to a spectacular start, 30% ahead of our estimates for the first 2 games of Clausura, or 3. And so it was, I was talking about this with friends. I think that, the long-term impact I think is really the question of the day. And where does it lie? Does it lie in the stadiums, or does it lie on air? I tend to worry for teams and leagues about their live event experience going forward and the impact that will have. But I think on the broadcast side, it's been okay.
I wanted to get the opinion from Rob and Boris as well, because Rob, obviously with data and following live scores on your platform, and I have to admit I've done so for over definitely over a decade, maybe even 20 years, but and also from a highlights perspective, not Boris, Amir, because with your automated video solution company, you're providing your clients with a variety of personalized highlights options. So from your perspectives, how have you seen the behavior of fans change or evolve?
During COVID?
Yes.
So obviously we saw like a really huge spike in the usage of the need for automation and highlights and starting to use this content out there from different, like on digital, social platforms, the growth around this. There was also a big need with archive and understanding the value of archive, having the rights holders be able to have it digitized and being able to use it was a really important piece during this time. There was no live sports, and how you keep your fans engaged, and sports is such a big relief and entertainment for a lot of people. So how do you use it? So the ability to have those things in scale and being able to personalize specific highlights for specific markets and being able to continue communicate with the fans wherever they sit with the right fans was really important to one, keep the fans engaged, and even now we're seeing the growth in specific markets.
And Rob?
Yeah, so I mean, 2020 obviously a unique year for all of us. We decided to launch our OTT service at the start of 2020, pre the pandemic. And so we essentially embarked on the launch of our OTT platform on a remote basis, really. So we actually launched the service within the Livescore app in June, and we've initially set out to stream quality live stream content, initially football. We're covering 14 different competitions now. We'll stream 1,000 matches this season. And we hope the global reach that we have will enable us to continue that as a distribution service to both rights holders and also on behalf of our user base around the world. Video on demand definitely has huge potential from our perspective, both from a rights holder perspective, and we're having some lots of conversations around how we can distribute video on demand content on behalf of rights holders into markets where they may not have as much reach, as much penetration as perhaps they might like. So that's definitely a really interesting angle, the distribution opportunity. But equally, from our own perspective, we're exploring production of our own content, both original but also complementary to the rights holders who we're working with as well. So we're still very early days. We launched in June with 7-8 months old in that respect. But because we've launched within the app where there's an existing user base, we've seen an immediate engagement from our user base, which is great to see. But still very early days, and both live and VOD for us will remain equally important throughout the course of this year.
Gentlemen, so much has changed from the time when we were growing up watching sports, and all the platforms that you can get it on and all the formats that are available. Rob mentioned that Livescore recently started an OTT platform, and I wanted to get your opinions on how that model works and going direct to consumer in that way, rather than going like the old days, whether that's through cable or third-party broadcaster, having an option to go direct and to go digital as well, and how that's working out.
I'll take a stab at that one. I think that the main thing is for us to make sure that we're reaching our audience and our fans wherever they're consuming content. And that might be with the 90-minute live matches or highlights or shoulder content. At the end of the day, what we want to do is super serve the existing core fan and actually reach out to new audiences, and show them a little bit of the product with the hopes of getting them converted, let's say, into that super fan. From the OTT perspective, I don't think it's a matter of old versus new. I think it's just really catering to the consumer. LaLiga started its own OTT project a few years ago, with the initial idea of really learning about the OTT world and how that direct relation with the consumer works. At the same time, we keep on having our relationship with our broadcasters that have been our partners for many years, but it doesn't mean that you can't actually start investigating and looking into what that potential model would look like. Right now we have a series of smaller sports that we've acquired the rights for, and it's not a paid offering as of today, but it has allowed us to learn not only a lot about operating an OTT, but also about our audience. We gather data from our audience for many different places. You have from ticketing information to how your audience is interacting with your digital products on social and now through OTT. So that learning and that knowledge of the audience at a deep level certainly sets you up on a better position. Now, what the future has for us in that sense, I think it will vary from territory to territory and depending on the conditions that exist. But I think it's a matter of actually playing on both sides of the future of broadcasting and just being ready for whenever you need to.
Anybody want to share their view?
Yeah, I think for us, we launched Peacock in July. and it has been an amazing success. The most successful content on Peacock has been Premier League and news content for lots of reasons, right? All the wrong ones. I think the Premier League has been the one shining star that people go to have a good time. And it's been a great recruiter. I think there's, like to Boris's point, I think you either have to go really deep, super serving your fans, which we do on our own platforms, be it Telemuno or NBC Sports. On Peacock, we're bringing people in and they're looking at this gigantic platform of Universal Studios content, The Office, Jurassic Park, you know, all the great content that NBC or Universal Studios have made over the years. So I think you can succeed either way. And I think, you know, for us, we've made the bet that, you know, Peacock, in fact, we've been quiet on Peacock, allowing those folks to get a head start on the English language audience. And again, Premier League is their best recruiter of new subscriptions. We're going to, actually, this news is relatively new. We're going to put our first game on Peacock in Spanish language on February 21st with Man City versus Arsenal. And so we're going to get some real great metrics back from how that's working. And then, you know, hopefully the results will say we need more of that. And, you know, we got more. We're very invested in Premier League, Chivas, NFL, and of course, FIFA. Really well invested in FIFA.
Maybe I'll make a transition into fragmentation, Ray, because it's fragmentation of audience and fragmentation of rights. How has that changed the way that people are consuming and the way that you also try to tailor content and your live broadcasts with any additional commentary maybe to your fan base? Not necessarily you, but also the other people.
Sure. And again, you know, I know Boris is a smart guy. He's got a lot of stuff figured out. It's really about tailoring content. So it's about understanding your audience first, right? First understand, then be understood. So first you understand your audience, and then you work hard using data and metrics that are available in ways that, you know, the Nielsen company could never even get close to providing. And so we're cutting short form all over, using highlights as needed. Ultimately, it's about aggregation of audience. At the end of the day, you just have to have enough content cut up the right way or not cut at all to serve everyone. And there are more people out there. I think the one thing that's changing, we're finding, is I call it the FOMO moment of, you know, water cooler talk used to be about primetime television. And now water cooler talk is about sports. And so there's a lot of folks who kind of might not have cared as much, but now they're kind of left out of conversation if they're not aware of the messy leak that happened, or, you know, other things that are interesting for a different reason. But I think it's about aggregation in the long run. Ultimately, it always has been, but now there's so many platforms. You have to be aggressive and out there on every one of them, or else you're going to leave a lot of people with something else to look at or go to, which is even worse.
If I may, just to add a bit about the entire OTT space, and the reason and things are happening is not just about doing OTT and direct to consumer, is also actually having the ability to create new type of experiences. Technologies is entering a lot of those spaces, and I think if the leagues directly decides to go directly to fans, they need to bring something else that they're not able to, that the fans are not able to get from different type of services. We're seeing now, if it's Amazon Prime with Thursday Night Football, or with EPL in the UK, creating completely different experiences with X-Ray and stuff they can do there, or YouTube TV, with giving you the ability to have catch-ups, highlights, and having a lot of stuff. Eventually, technology within the OTT, it's not about just being a straightforward, here's a live game, watch it, and as you be able to get it in any other platform. Mm-hmm. The platform's gonna need to think about how they are catering the fans in a more personalized, and maybe personalization, maybe other stuff, to create a completely different experience for them that is much more catered to the younger fans, or is now much more on the phones, on Instagram stories, and there's a lot of different type of ways they are consuming content at the moment that the OTT gonna allow them to do it, which linear wouldn't able to do it.
Right.
Does anybody want to add to that conversation of the fragmentation of rights and how to appeal to different audience and aggregate them, as Ray said?
Well, I would just echo what Amir just said, that from a consumer experience standpoint, I think we're really just scratching the surface of what's possible with technology. And I think there are some early examples, as Amir pointed out. But I think whilst we've, in the main, pretty much solved the technology challenge of how to deliver a live feed in a robust, reliable, and scaled fashion from one device to another, I think all of the aspects of personalization, integration of data, the ability to make viewing off digital devices more of a community-based experience, those are all trends that we see coming down the line. Which from a business perspective, and running our own direct consumer service Game Pass, we're very excited about, and that's where a lot of our thinking and energy around innovation is going.
And how quickly do you have to adapt your strategy in order to keep up with the times? Because I'm not young enough to be across everything that's happening on social and on digital, but so many more clubs and rights owners are going on Twitch. Social media cross promotion of wow content and snackable content, if that is still appropriate to say these days. How do you live in this ecosystem when there are so many ways to reach this audience, and you keep hearing that this audience doesn't have the kind of attention span that our generation did, and have to give them different things? How do you navigate that in your respective businesses and interests?
I'll take a first crack at that. I think it's a lot of testing, honestly. And I think that if there's anyone that tells you that they've got to figure it out and that there's just one solution, it's lying. What the NFL did with one of the playoff games, partnering with Nickelodeon, for example, was incredibly inspiring and motivating to see, to be honest. The broadcast itself, yeah, you're just taking the feed, but the way that you're putting an overlay just to appeal to that younger audience with characters that they're relatable to, and that's just one part of it. And I think that, and Samir can of course jump in if it was positively received or not. Based on my Twitter focus group, I think it was a success. We in LaLiga started doing live broadcasting of the games, changing the audio to Twitch casters, and so far it has been great. I think it's something that without necessarily appealing to change completely the way that you're delivering the content, you're really understanding that there's a different audience that will want to potentially have the same commentators that you're used to and that you are kind of aligning with LaLiga for so many years. But there's also a part of the audience that might have a bigger resonance to a caster that they're used to seeing on Twitch, and all of a sudden you try to merge both worlds, and you might have a success. But again, I think that at this point, at least from my personal point of view, it's a lot of testing, and you're never doing it fast enough. It's just impossible.
So I would say that to jump on that, first you've got to hire those people that are using all those platforms. To your point, Pedro, that we're not using, or is snackable still a word? I don't know. Maybe could be a month old or out the door. I still use it, FYI. But so I think bring those people in and learn from them. I think the second thing is bring in a lot of them. So the good thing about an NBC Telemundo is we've got a lot of people on it. Third thing is, how every day. I mean, you've got to do this every day. With our digital team, which we now call content, we don't have a linear and a digital, we just have a content group. The things that I tell them all the time: mistakes are good, experiment a lot, and fail fast.
Rob, what about you? And obviously on the OTT game, you're coming in fresh. So is that an advantage because you can pick up and learn from perhaps where others went wrong? Or is that a disadvantage because you don't have that background knowledge that others might into what went wrong and why?
I think it's both, actually, Pedro. Yeah, we're fully aware that we're pretty new entrants in this space. So we look at and observe all of those great organisations have got huge experience in this field, and that's a given. That will never change. But also we've launched as an OTT first business. So we are very much a digital first company, and but we have the same discussions internally as the guys are outlining here. Currently you can stream the game in the app. Hopefully you'll soon be able to cast that to your TV. But my 16-year-old son doesn't watch football on a TV. He watches it on an Xbox or on his mobile. So I think to Ray's point, you have to continue to keep surrounding yourself internally with the right people, the right expertise. This isn't going to change, for all of us. I think we're going to constantly have to evolve. I think it makes it quite challenging to plan too far ahead because everything is so fast moving. But as the guys have said, it's about testing, learning, absorbing the data that you get from those tests. And then planning from there, really. So I would say even though we are we're a digital first business, it's really difficult for us to see beyond the next 6 months, to be honest, because we're already discussing whether you create an app for on a smart TV or whether it's on the Xbox. But these things in isolation become quite heavy in them in how you manage them, in the running costs. And I think in the end, it's about just observing what the consumers are doing and kind of building out as you go. So it's an exciting space. I mean, let's be honest, it's a great space to be in. But the kind of continued evolution of the industry is going to keep us on our toes for some time to come.
So I have a provocative question from the audience. So far and historically, in the majority of cases, clubs and teams have been partners and have been obviously with the centralization of rights. They haven't really been competing with each other for a while. But when will clubs or teams take matters into their own hands? The harsh financials of COVID have meant clubs are sorely looking into their own platforms, their own benefits from them. How can you as broadcasters or leagues continue to add value to the clubs?
So coming from the NBC's perspective, we've got the biggest and widest platform, but we've seen this. There was a point in time at NBC where I was on the corporate team for the regional sports networks, and Ted Leonsis had started his own business and Jerry Reinsdorf had started his own business. So before the pandemic, owners of teams have been trying to take and have been successfully taking some of their business in-house, if you will. The game is still the game. And I think while that might be changing over time, I'm not sure, one of the terms we used to use is no one will ever come between, a Celtics fan and a Celtics game. Nobody paints their face green to watch CSI Miami. Nobody has pajamas that say Modern Family. I mean, these are all great content, but the passion is still around the team, and that passion comes from winning or losing games. So I think we just have to work with them. And I don't think they would ever see themselves in the business of taking it all on.
From the LaLiga perspective, the first thing is that each team has different priorities, and you cannot just assume that there is a one-size-fits-all strategy that they all should follow. I'll give you an example. Barcelona has an office in New York that manages all of their Americas business, and they've had it for some years, and for them it works. Real Madrid doesn't have an office specifically regionally, and they manage their business specifically from Madrid. Doesn't mean that one is right or wrong. It has to fit an overall strategy, and I don't think necessarily that you should limit the business for a club on the TV rights. I think it's been proven through the years and the different examples that a centralized, TV rights sales maximizes the revenue for everyone involved. I think that there's little doubt at this point. I know that at the beginning, when this trend started happening, there was always the question of, are the bigger clubs subsidizing the smaller ones? I think we're past that. But beyond the centralized TV rights operation, there's a lot of businesses that you can build around it. And actually, when you have a centralized rights operation and you can get the best deal possible for the overall league in terms of exposure and financials, it actually opens a lot of other doors for clubs to exploit their own strategies. In the LaLiga side, there's some clubs where they feel that the international expansion is incredibly important given where their brand is. Some have specific territories that they want to focus, and there's some others that really are just focusing on the local fan and the performance of the team, and all of that is fair. I think it's different. The good thing, I think it's once you have a league that's aligned with the club, that's opening a lot of the doors and creating opportunities, and then let each club decide what's the best strategy for them to grow their own business.
Got a question from Samir here, also from our viewers. Just how valuable have the NFL's highlight packages become in international markets, or is the immediate release of free highlights more important for the growth of the NFL than attaching a monetary value? So I guess, is it more about exposure or monetization internationally?
Good question. I mean, in many international markets, the NFL is a challenger sport, and as a result of that, reach is incredibly important to us. And this really drives our overall distribution strategy, both for live games, but also other forms of content, whether that's highlights or documentary programming. And we really try and move people through a process of awareness, interest, adoption, and avidity. And so as a result, the model that we try and put in place, market by market, has three distinct components. At the top end, it's all about free access to content, which is potentially through partnerships with free-to-air broadcasters for live games, or the distribution of snackable content through different social media platforms. And that's integral to our strategy, really, to try and touch and reach as many fans or potential fans as possible. We then typically work with pay TV operators in each market, and we still very much believe in the value of being part of a good bundle of sports rights, which has been carefully curated to appeal to sports fans in a given country. And then finally, we have our own direct-to-consumer product, which is really there to serve our most avid fans. And so that's the model and the template that we put in place in each market. We think that that's the best way to drive long-term fandom and hence long-term value for the league and the 32 clubs within the NFL. But I think it's really important to say that in addition to having the right overall strategy, finding the right partners that really believe in your brand, in your product, and can help tailor and customize it. That's absolutely critical. This season, the start of the season, we renewed our long-standing partnership with Sky in the UK. And one of the most exciting aspects of that deal was the launch of a dedicated Sky Sports NFL channel. And that really has done wonders for us. We already have a very strong, thriving, passionate fan base in the UK and Ireland, but actually having a channel which Sky marketed alongside its other channels really helped elevate the level of promotion that we were able to receive. And we've seen the impact of that year on year in terms of overall ratings, where we're up around 30%, which is a pretty fantastic result, particularly given the schedule congestion that's happened this year, where lots of different sports are now being broadcast at the same time. So I think for us, highlights is really part of that overall distribution strategy for us, trying to reach as many people as possible. make them aware of the specific appeal and identity of the NFL, and then through ongoing exposure, interaction, drive high levels of fandom.
We've talked obviously about reaching and engaging as many fans as possible. And I had a question for Amir regarding the technologies that have been developed in recent times to try to appeal to new fans and give new experiences, to make sure that the broadcasters and the rights owners keep being able to make that connection.
Technologies, and everybody's trying to disrupt and find new ways to kind of like interact with the fans, and trying to look at those ways. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of stuff around augmented, and different big leagues are doing a lot of stuff around reality and VR. So this is like a new way to engage with them. We're seeing a lot of stuff around, I think now one of the places trying to tackle is personalization, and how you're able to personalize based on localization as well. So if you have an NBA player who is originally from the Philippines, how you're able to have a better, curated highlights within the people in the Philippines that are able to only track him. Even up until today, we're seeing the growth in terms of or sports gaming. If it's fantasy, that now we're seeing millions of people playing fantasy. If it's fantasy football or basketball or others, and having their own leagues, they're now watching the game in a different way. They're much more into their players versus the teams. How you are able to create the specific your own sports center, disrupting red zones. If it's up until now, the red zone was one size fits all. How can you actually create a red zone that is curated just for Amir, just for Samir, Ray, and each one has his own stuff that he's interested about. So a lot of those technologies that now is actually existing there now are starting to be implemented in different type of platforms to create a different way for the fans to consume the sport in a live way that it's relevant to them.
I wanted to bring up the B word, and the B word is bubble, because every time we get ready to talk about a new cycle of broadcast rights bids, there's a lot of speculation in the media. Will the bubble burst? When will it burst? What is the ceiling for the value of these rights? How would you answer the bubble question right now? Because when you look at this new decade, the 20s, with all of these fragmentation of rights and all these platforms coming into play, is that better because you have more ways to sell to different markets in different ways, or is that worse because you don't have the big sharks only to deal with fighting against each other?
So I'll go. There's been a bubble rumor since 1985 when Rupert Murdoch launched the Fox network off the back of the NFL rights. In the 90s, Major League Baseball was about to have no bidders, and they started the baseball network, and then they had bidders. We had the internet bubble around 2000. We had the financial crisis of 2008. So this is just like, wash, rinse, and repeat for me. The market has not gone down. I think you could compare it, the Messi leak aside. I remember when Michael Jordan signed his contract, it was, oh my gosh, this is the end of sports as we know it. And it was like, the market is whatever the market is willing to bear. And everybody has different sights and expectations, needs, wants, desires, and bottom lines. And until everybody's in the exact same place, which I think is less likely today than it was 30, 40 years ago, and the monetization opportunities are very different than they were 30 or 40 years ago, I just, I don't see it, to be honest. I think you got to make a disciplined offer for your business and bring everything you got and don't leave anything on the field. And, sports, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Actually, I think it's going to go up, to be honest. Like, even though as a fan, I'm talking about now, I'm not talking from the right. It's live sports is just becoming more important. Like, that's the only thing that it's now live that is important for. Like, if in the past you had, you wanted to make sure you watch Game of Thrones, there's not a lot of those Game of Thrones that everybody's watching in the same day that are able to talk about in the day after. So the live sports is becoming the most important assets a lot of those broadcasters has, that they will keep willing to pay this price, especially now that what's happening with Netflix, and there's a gold rush to the whole like Netflix with Apple TV and Disney Plus. Eventually, sports going to be the thing that's going to make the difference, and that's why I actually think it's going to go up.
Yeah.
I'll double down on that. I think there's a nuance to the concept of the bubble, to be honest, because I think that what you're realizing is, and I think COVID accelerated that, is that there's certain properties that are premium and that are worth paying a premium, and potential partners, bidding, to have them no matter what. And then there's a lot of properties in the middle that are interchangeable. From a subscription business perspective, for example, not where we are, but if you're an OTT or a broadcaster, and that there are certain properties that bring you either the same number of subscribers more or less, or the same audience, you're gonna have less of an appetite to go aggressively and get one of those. So I think that's what you're gonna see. I think the general sports bubble is not gonna stay as it has been, and the premium properties are gonna capture the lion's share of the continued growth. And there's some other properties that are gonna either fall to the niche stage, let's say, or disappear.
So what would you say to the consumer then, the fan? Because if we get to a point, just for argument's sake, that if I'm a football fan and I want it all, and I got to get LaLiga TV to get LaLiga, I got to get Livescore to watch another competition, I got to get Peacock to get access to something else, and I got to get the NFL network. And at the end of the month, that's no longer 50 or 60 euros, that's 100. And then I want Spotify, and then I want Netflix, and I want Amazon. I mean, that gets to a point where it's too much, right? So what's your message to the consumer about where they can expect the market to be going?
So the bundle wasn't that bad, right?
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, Boris. Here at Comcast.
In reality, I don't think the issue of the bundle, and as you're explaining it, very clearly, is pricing. I think it's the flexibility to tailor your bundle. I think that if you were one of the few that wanted to have everything, it's gonna cost you more or less the same, and the user experience is probably gonna be a little bit more messy. But there are a lot of consumers, and I'm included into that I'm not really interested in having absolutely everything. So I'll go and do my smaller bundles, if you will. I don't know if I'm gonna end up paying a bit less or not, but I'll have the flexibility of in the friendliness from a user perspective to get certain plan on Spotify, and I'll get Netflix, and I'll get LaLiga, and maybe a month in the year where the league is over, I'll cancel or pause my subscription. So I think it's just the redefinition of the bundle, not from a pricing perspective, but just from a flexibility perspective.
Yeah, I also think that's a bubble that can burst. It's the how much money are people willing to spend on subscriptions? How hard is it to keep 7 on your auto pay checking account? And then do you do a lot of on and off, which is like really hard? So, in our last earnings call at Comcast, we talked about 250,000 lost bundlers, right? Cable subscribers, and 583,000 additional broadband. So right now that trade-off is occurring, right? The bundle is diminishing. The broadband opportunity to subscribe is growing. We like them no matter what they do. And then I think it becomes how much what's the best deal? Is the bundle so bad, and does that flatten out over time? Or people come back, it's like, oh, that was hard. Or do they just, buy less? So I think that's the bubble that everybody has to think about.
We may see new bundles. I mean, think about Amazon and the increasing investments it's making in sports rights. I mean, that Amazon Prime is a bundle, whole range of different products and services. So I think this area is pretty pretty fluid, and I think too soon to say with definitive certainty that like this is absolutely the way it's going to be.
Correct.
Amir, maybe one day we're going to have a bundle between the three, like NBA, NFL, and MLB. Who knows?
We'll see. You never know what the future will hold.
We're going to wrap up shortly, gentlemen, but is there anything that is taking you by surprise, considering today's sports consumer, just one trait they have that you wouldn't expect them to have, and how you try to cater to that in the future?
So I could just speak from our early months since launch. It's definitely the I guess the viewing time and the kind of what's seen as the first screen these days. So having launched within a mobile app, obviously, many consumers these days are seeing mobile as their first screen, and that's definitely been in our thinking when we're starting to evolve into casting, so that we can essentially push that content onto what has essentially become the second screen, and so that our users can continue to use their phone in the numerous ways that they want to while our game's on the TV. So that's been a key learning for us in the early days.
In about 30 seconds, does anybody want to add anything to that?
I'll quickly just say that I think it's been the engagement of fans when you do deliver the right commercial message in the right place at the right time, and the reaction and the ROI advertisers are seeing, because they're spending more, not less. They're trying lots of different things, and when they get it right, it works.
Ray, Rob, Boris, Samir, Amir, I wanted to thank all of you for your time. Great to get your insight on this topic, and really interesting to see where the sports broadcasting trends will continue to evolve in the years to come. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today, and for now, I'd like to hand it back to the studio.